A break, a pause, I wait. Oh baby, cause I know I was the cause. Every time I close my eyes I see your face. I'm longing for your kisses and your sweet embrace. Now you're saying you need time and that you need your space, and you don't know if things will ever be the same. Well, I will wait for you.
I forgot to turn on my mic. Okay, let me try that again. Hold on, back to the starting screen. Let me take it from the top. Hello, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. How has everybody been? I've been doing pretty good myself. I hope you've been doing the same. Let's hope we can actually start stream this time. So, we're going back to reading through Principia Mathematica today. But about halfway through my last stream, my mic decided to die. So, and I have no clue what happened there, but that's what happened. So, we're gonna be going back to we've only a few. I can't speak. We're only a few pages into the introduction, so I'm gonna be going back to the start of the introduction, and we're just gonna be reading from there. For this stream. I'm very tired. Excuse me. So, good. Botrix is joined the channel. Thank you, Botrix. Okay, we're gonna try to do that, and before we start, some. I'm gonna pretend I didn't see that. Before we start, what was I gonna say? Oh, they changed the birthday song. I learned that today, and why? I mean, I kind of understand why, but why? And they changed it, so now there's a stop in the middle of the element OP part, and I don't like there being a stop in the middle of the element OP part. It's not right. It's not. They should just leave it. Bring back the element OP. Yeah, I didn't have anything else to talk about. I learned that today. I wanted to mention it. So now that it's mentioned, do we have anything else we want to talk about before we begin? Oh, excuse me. Oh, I got a new audio thing. So if my audio sounds off, just let me know. I'll try to fix it. I haven't had a chance to read through the user's manual yet, because I just got it. I hooked it up, and I was kind of just hoping for the best at the moment, to be honest. It's a new audio interface. Like, I can independently mute, like, if I hit this button, you can't see it, but I could hit this button, and I'll, like, mute Discord. If I'm in a call with someone, and I hit this button over here, and I'll mute my mic, I'm not going to do that, because then you won't be able to hear me. I can hit this button over here, and I can mute games, or just, like, the computer as a whole. And it's really cool. I have all my games. I'm going to set up all my games to run through this button, but I'm still going to leave the computer as a whole on a different channel, because there's so many different channels for this thing, and it's amazing. I love it. I can't say that yet. I don't know if I love it or hate it. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet or even test it out. So I still have the old one on my desk in its spot. Sort of. I moved it over to the side to put the new one in the spot where I want my audio interface. So I'm going to get a chance to play with it a little bit. But the headset I'm using does have to get plugged into the auxiliary cable, so it does have fancy uh it does have microphone effects and things I could use, and really good a ton of microphone settings, so I could really just get this dialed in to wherever I want. But the thing with that is I'm gonna need to go in and actually set that stuff up, but it won't do that through the auxiliary port. So either I need to buy an adapter or I just wait until the microphone I have coming in arrives, which should be next week. So it's going to be a few weeks before I know if I like this thing or not, or if it's any good. But it looks cleaner on my desk, I'll say that much. I could independently control I could control so many things with it too. Like independently be able to mute things. Actually having a mute button is great. I like that. And I could also control my output volume, make it louder or quieter, and it's great. And there's this one big button right here, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the idea of it, but I don't know if I enjoy the thing itself yet. So we'll have to see if that's any good. I forgot to hit record. You know what? It's fine. If I was going to do anything with the recording, that part would have been cut out anyway, so we're good. Let's open up the activity feed, get it back up in here. So now we can see again, and we should be good to begin. So we'll be, like I said earlier, we'll be starting from the beginning of the introduction, just going back a few pages. We're not missing much. Introduction. The mathematical logic which occupies part 1 of the present work has been constructed under the guidance of 3 different purposes. In the first place, it aims at effecting the greatest possible analysis of the ideas with which it deals, and of the processes by which it conducts demonstrations, and at diminishing to the utmost the number of undefined ideas and undiminished propositions, called respectively primitive ideas and primitive propositions, from which it starts. In the second place, it is framed with a view to the perfectly precise expression in its symbols of mathematical propositions to secure such expression and to secure it in the choice of topics. In the third place, the system has been specifically framed to solve the paradoxes which in recent years have troubled students of symbolic logic and the theory of, I'm going to try to pronounce this, but it's probably going to be wrong, Agrits. Yeah, I think that's wrong. It is believed that the theory of types, as set forth in which follows, leads both to the avoidance of contradictions and to the detection of the precise fallacy which has given rise to them. Of the above 3 purposes, the first and third often compel us to adopt methods, definitions, and notations which are more complicated or more difficult than they would be if we had the second object alone in view. This applies especially to the theory of descriptive expressions, 14 and 30, and to the theory of classes and relations, 20 and 21. On these 2 points, and to a lesser degree on others, it has been found necessary to make some sacrifice of lucidity to correctness. The sacrifice is, however, in the main only temporary, In each case, the notation ultimately adopted through its real meaning is very complicated, has an apparently simple meaning which, except at certain crucial points, can without danger be substituted in thought for the real meaning. It is therefore convenient in a preliminary explanation of the notation to treat these apparent simple meanings as primitive ideas, i.e., as ideas introduced without definition. When the notation has grown more or less familiar, it is easier. Why do you keep disconnecting? Why? I am getting so tired of this. I'm not restarting again. I'm just gonna keep going. The easier order of development could not be adopted. It is therefore given in the introduction. The explanations given in Chapter 1 of the introductions are as such a place of lucidity before correctness. The full explanations are partly supplied in the succeeding chapters of the introduction, partly given in the body of the work. The use of symbolism other than that of words in all parts of the book which aims at embodying strictly accurate demonstrative reasoning has been forced on us by the constant pursuit of the above three purposes. The reason for this extension of symbolism beyond the familiar regions of number and allied ideas are many. 1. The ideas are employed. The ideas here employed are more abstract than those familiarly considered in language. Accordingly, there are no words which are used mainly in the exact consonances which are required here. Any use of words would require unnatural limitations to their ordinary meaning, which would be, in fact, more difficult to remember consistently than are the definitions of entirely new symbols. 2. The grammatical structure of language is adapted to a wide variety of usage. Thus, it poses no unique simplicity in representing the few, simple, though highly abstract process and ideas arising in the deductive trains of reasoning employed here. In fact, the very abstract simplicity of the ideas of this work defeats language. Language can represent complex ideas more easily. The proposition, a whale is big, represents language at its best, giving terse expression to a complicated fact, while the true analysis of one is a number leads in language to an intolerable prolixity. Accordingly, terseness is gained by using a symbolism especially designed to represent the ideas and processes of deduction which occur in this work. 3. The adaptation of the rules of symbolism to the processes of deduction aids the intuition in regions too abstract for the imagination readily to present to the mind the true relation between the ideas employed for various correlations of symbols become familiar as represented important correlations of ideas, and in turn the possible relations according to the rules of the symbolism between those correlations of symbols become familiar. As representing important correlations of ideas, and in turn possible relations according to the rules of the symbolism between those correlations of symbolism become familiar. I think I just repeated myself. And These further correlations represent still more complicated relations between the abstract ideas, and thus the mind is finally led to construct trains of reasoning and regions of thought in which the imagination would be entirely unable to sustain itself without symbolic help. Ordinary language yields no such help. Its grammatical structure does not represent uniquely the relations between ideas involved. Drink break. Thus, a whale is big, and 1 is a number. Both look alike, so the eye gives no help to the imagination. 4. The terseness of symbolism enables a whole proposition to be represented to the eyesight as one whole, or at most in 2 or 3 parts, divided where the natural breaks represented in the symbolism occur. This is a humble property, but is very important in connection with the advantage enumerated under the heading 3. 5. The attainment of the first method object of this work, namely the complete enumeration of all the ideas and steps in reasoning employed in mathematics, necessitates both terseness and presentation of each proposition with the maximum of formality and a form as characteristic of itself as possible. Further light on the methods and symbolism of this book is thrown by a slight consideration excuse me. Where was I? Sorry about that. Employed in mathematics necessitates both tierness. I'm gonna go with tierness and the presentation of each proposition with the maximum of formality and a form of as characteristic of itself as possible. Further light on the methods and the symbolism of this book is thrown by slight consideration of the limits to their useful employment. Alpha. Most mathematical investigation is concerned not with the analysis of the most complete processes of reasoning, but with the presentation of such an abstract of the proof as is sufficient to convince a properly instructed mind for such investigations. The detailed presentation of these steps in reasoning I'm yawning a lot, I'm sorry. Is of course unnecessary, provided that the details is carried far enough to guard against error. In this connection, it may be remembered that the investigations of, not going to try that name, and others of the same school have shown that even in the common topics of mathematics, thought much more detailed is necessary than previous generations of mathematics and had anticipated. Beta. In proportion as the imagination works easily in any region of thought, symbolism, except for the express purpose of analysis, becomes only necessary as a convenient shorthand, writing to register results obtained without its help. It is a subsidiary object of this work to show that with the aid of symbolism, deductive reasoning can be extended to regions of thought not usually supposed amenable. I don't know what that word is, to mathematical treatment, and until the ideas of such branches of knowledge have become more familiar, the detailed type of reasoning which is also required for the analysis of these steps is appropriate to the investigation of the general truths concerning these subjects. Chapter 1. Preliminary explanations of ideas and notations. The notation adopted in this... Is my mic still working? Yeah, it is. Okay. The notation adopted in the present work is based upon that of Pino, and the following explanations are to some extent modeled on those which he prefixes to his Formulio Mathematico. His use of dots as brackets is adopted, and so are many of his symbols. Variables. The idea of a variable, as it occurs in the present work, is more general than that which is explicitly used in ordinary mathematics. In ordinary mathematics, a variable generally stands for an undetermined number or quantity. In mathematical logic, any symbol whose meaning is not determined is called a variable, and the various determinations of which its meaning excuse me. I'm sorry if I'm making you all yawn with how much I'm yawning, but you're gonna have to deal with it. Hold on, where was I? And the various determinations of which its meaning is susceptible are called the values of the variable. The values may be any set of entities, propositions, functions, classes, or relations according to circumstance. If a statement is made about Mr. A and Mr. B, Mr. A and Mr. B are variables whose values are confined to men. A variable may either have a conventionally assigned range of values or may, in the absence of any indication of the range of which values, have as the range of its values all determinations which render the statement in which it occurs significant. Thus, when a textbook of logic asserts that A is A without any indication as to what A may be, that is meant is that any statement of the form A is A is true. We call a variable restricted when its values are confined to some only of those of which it is capable, otherwise we shall call it unrestricted. Thus an unrestricted variable occurs. It represents any object such as the statement concerned can be made significantly, i.e., either truly or falsely, concerning that object. For the purposes of logic, the unrestricted variable is more convenient than the restricted variable, and we shall always employ it. We shall find the unrestricted variable is still subject to limitations imposed by the matter of its occurrence, i.e., things which can be said significantly concerning a proposition cannot be said significantly concerning a class or a relation, and so on. But the limitations to which the unrestricted variable is subject do not need to be explicitly indicated, since they are limits of significance of the statement in which the variable occurs, and are therefore intrinsically determined by the statement. Thus it will be more fully explained later. To sum up, the three salient facts connected with the use of variables are: 1. That a variable is ambiguous in its denotion and accordingly undefined. 2. That a variable preserves a recognizable identity in various occurrences throughout the same context, so that many variables can occur together in the same context, each with its separate identity. And 3. That either its Either the range of possible determinations of two variables may be the same, so that a possible determination of one variable is also a possible determination of the other, or the ranges of two variables may be different, so that if a possible determination of one variable is given to the other, the resulting complete phrase is meaningless instead of becoming a complete unambiguous proposition, true or false, as would be the case if all variables in it had been given any suitable determinations. The uses of variable letters, the uses of various letters, variables will be denoted by single letters, and so will certain constants. But a letter which has once been assigned to a constant by definition must not afterwards be used to denote a variable. The small letters of the ordinary alphabet will all be used for variables except P and S after 40, in which constant meanings are assigned to these two letters. The following capital letters will receive constant meanings: B, C, D, E, F, I, and J. Among small Greek letters, we shall give constant meanings to epsilon, iota, pi, and at a later stage, eta and theta, and omega. Eta, theta, and omega, Certain Greek capitals will from time to time be introduced for constants, but Greek capitals will not be used for variables. Of the remaining letters, P, Q, R will be called propositional letters and will stand for variable propositions, except that from 40 onwards. P must not be used for a variable. F, G, phi, psi, chi, theta, and until 33, F will be called functional letters and will be used for variable functions. The small Greek letters not already mentioned will be used for variables. Those values are classes and will be referred to simply as Greek letters. Ordinary capital letters, not already mentioned, will be used for variables whose values are relations and will be referred to simply as capital letters. Ordinary small letters other than P, Q, R, S, F, G will be used for variables whose value are not known to be function, classes, or relations. These letters will be referred to simply as small Latin letters. After the early part of the work, variable propositions and variable functions will hardly ever occur. We shall then have three main kinds of variables: variable classes, denotation by small Greek letters, variable relations, denoted by capitals, and variables not given as necessarily classes or relations, which will be denoted by small Latin letters. In addition to this usage of small Greek letters for variable classes, capital letters for variable relations, small Latin letters for variables of types wholly undetermined by context, these arise from the possibility of systematic ambiguity. Explained later in the explanations of the theory of types, the reader is only remember that all small letters represent variables unless they have been defined as constants in some previous place in the book. In general, the structure of the context determines the scope of the variables contained in it, but the special indication of the nature of the variables employed, as here proposes, saves considerable labor of thought. The fundamental functions of propositions. I'm gonna take a sip of my drink. The fundamental functions of propositions and aggregation of propositions considered as wholes, not necessarily unambiguous, determined unto a single position, more complex than its constituents, is a function with propositions as arguments. The general idea of such an aggregation of propositions or of variables representing propositions will not be employed in this work, but there are four special cases which are of fundamental importance, since all the aggregations of subordinate propositions into one complex proposition which occur in the sequel are formed out of them step by step. They are 1. The contradictory function, 2. The logical sum or the surjective function, 3. The logical product or conjugative function, 4. The implicative function. These functions, in a sense in which they are required in this work, are not all independent, and if two of them are taken as primarily undefined ideas, the other two can be defined in terms of them. It is to some extent, though, not entirely arbitrary as to which functions are taken as primitive. Simplicity of primitive ideas and symmetry of treatment seem to be gained by taking the first two functions as primitive ideas. The contradictory function with argument P, where P is any proposition, is the proposition which the contradictory of P, that is the proposition asserting that P is not true, and thus is denoted by theta P. No, not theta P. Tilde P. I'm sorry. And thus tilde P is the contradictory function with P as argument, and means the notation of the proposition P. It will also be referred to as proposition not P. Thus, tilde P means not P, which is the notation of P. The logical sum is a propositional function of two arguments P and Q, and the propositional asserting P or Q disjunctively, that is asserting that at least one of the two P and Q is true, thus denoted by PVQ, and thus PVQ is the logical sum with P and Q as arguments. It is also called the logical sum of P and Q. Accordingly, PVQ means at least P or Q is true, not including the cases in which both are true. No, not excluding the cases in which both are true. I'm sorry. The logical product is a propositional function with two arguments, P and Q, and is the proposition asserting P and Q conjunctively, that is asserting that both P and Q are true, and is denoted by a dot, by P dot Q, or in order to make the dots act as brackets in a way that is explained immediately by, I don't know how to read this to get it across, but so I'm just not gonna read the dots, and I'm just gonna start kind of reading them as ands after this part when it says and. PQ, or by PQ, or by PQ. Thus PQ is the logical product with P and Q as arguments, and is thus called a logical product. The logical product of P and Q, accordingly, PQ means that both P and Q are true. And it's easily seen that this function can be defined in terms of two preceding functions, for when P and Q are both true, it must be false that either not P or not Q is true. Hence in this book, PQ is merely a shortened form of the symbolism for not P, or not Q. Any further idea attaches to the proposition both P and Q are true is not required here. The implicative function is a propositional function with two arguments P and Q, and is sorry, I had a cough. The implicative function is a propositional function with two arguments P and Q, and is the proposition that either not P or Q is true. That is, it is the proposition not P or Q. Thus, if P is true, not P is false, and accordingly, the only alternative left by the proposition not P or Q is that Q is true. In other words, if P and not P or Q are both true, then Q is true. In this sense, the proposition not P or Q will be quoted as stating that P implies Q. The idea contained in this propositional function is so important that it requires a symbolism which with direct simplicity represents the proposition as connected P and Q without the intervention of not P, but implies as used here expresses nothing else than the connection between P and Q, also expressed by the disjunction not P or Q. The symbol employed for P implies Q, i.e. for not P or Q is not P or Q. This symbol may also be read as if P then Q. The association of implication with the use of apparent variables produces an extension called formal implication. This is explained later. It is an idea derivative from implication, as here defined, when it is necessarily explicitly to discriminate implication from formal implication. It is called material implication. Thus, material implication is simply implication as here defined. The process of inference, which is in common usage, is often confused with implication, is explained immediately. These four functions of propositions are the fundamental constant, i.e. definite, propositional functions with propositions as arguments, and all other constant propositional functions with propositions as arguments, so far as they are acquired in the present work, are formed out of them by successive steps. No variable proposition function of this kind occur in this work. Equivalence. The simplest example of the formation of a more complex function of propositions by the use of four fundamental forms is furnished by equivalence. Two propositions, P and Q, are said to be equivalent when P implies Q and Q implies P. Thus, relation between P and Q is denoted by P equivalence Q. Thus, P equivalence Q stands for if P then Q, Q, if Q then P. I guess that's and, ain't it? Hold up. If P then Q and if Q then P, it is easily seen that two propositions are equivalent when and only when they are both true or both false. Equivalence rises in the scale of importance when it comes to formal implication, and thus formal equivalence. It must not be supposed that two propositions are equivalent, are in any sense identical, or even remotely concerned with the same topic. And thus Newton was a man, and the sun is hot are equivalent as both being true, and Newton was not a man, and the sun is cold, are equivalent as being both false. But here we leave anticipated deductions. Wait, hold on. That's an H. But here we have anticipated deductions. Sorry, that was a printing error or like a scanning error, so that's why I said leave. Which follow later from our formal reasoning. Equivalence in its origin is merely a mutual implication as stated above. Truth values. The truth value of a proposition is truth if it is true, and falsehood if it is false. It will be observed that the truth values of P or Q, P and Q, if P then Q, not P, P equivalence Q, depend upon those values of P and Q, namely the truthhood value of P or Q is truth if the truth value of either P or Q is truth, and it is falsehood otherwise, that if that of P and Q is truth, if both P and Q is truth, and it is falsehood otherwise, that of if P then Q, it is truth if either that of P, wait, hold on, where was I? Is falsehood, or that of P is truth. That of not P, the opposite of that of P, and that of P equivalence true. P equivalence Q is truth if P and Q have the same truth value, and is falsehood otherwise. Now the only ways in which propositions will occur in the present work are ways derived from the above by combinations and repetitions. Hence it is easy to see through, though it cannot be formally proved. Hold on, where was I? Proved except for in each particular case that if proposition P occurs, any proposition of f of P, which shall ever have occasion to deal with the truth values of f of P, will depend not upon the particular proposition P, but only upon its truth values, i.e. if P equivalence Q, we shall have f of P equivalence f of Q. Thus, whenever two propositions are known to be equivalent, either may be suitable for the other in the formula with which we shall have occasions to deal. We may call a function f of P a truth